This is attorney Irvin Daphnis, and this is another episode 10 of IrvMotivates 100 Days of Real Motivation. And today's subject is entitled The Blueprint, Part 1. When I was a younger kid, I was very inquisitive. I was, I read a lot. I love to read, period, to this day. Readers make leaders. And, I found myself being dissatisfied with the, level of education that we were receiving. Specifically because I felt that there wasn't enough attention being paid to the world history. More importantly, and specifically, Black history, which is actually world history. Many of us students at that time, and this was pretty much in high school, really just had a burning desire to want to learn more about people of African descent, Africa, and the history class wasn't cutting it. So, be it as it may, I decided to just learn as much as I could, in the local library, because in the history class, specifically something that was very interesting, right? The Louisiana Purchase, all right? And that in and of itself is a misnomer, right? So we learned, it was probably just a paragraph, how the United States of America doubled in size because of the Louisiana Purchase, and it was, told that this was the greatest real estate purchase ever, right? Something like $15 million, right? For basically, it's $18 per square mile. So let's wrap that. Let's get that a little bit clearer, right? So the United States of America doubled in size as a result of the Louisiana Purchase. It was, what did we get as a result of the Louisiana Purchase? The Louisiana Purchase. Arkansas, Iowa, Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, Nebraska, Minnesota, Louisiana, large parts of North and Northeast New Mexico, South Dakota, I don't have enough fingers, Northern Texas, some parts of Wyoming, Montana, Colorado, including parts of Canada, Alberta, Saskatchewan. Now, this doubled the U.S. in size, and yet Napoleon Bonaparte, the greatest general at the time, who wanted to expand to the West, had all of this property in his possession, and decided to just sell it and let it go? Why? Well, as I did my research, I found out that in the island of Saint Dominique, which is now present-day Haiti, there had been a rebellion that had been going on from 1789, to 1803. See, what happened was Napoleon had the island of, which is now Haiti and the Dominican Republic, was all Saint Dominique. The African slaves, or Africans who were enslaved, because they weren't slaved, they were enslaved, right? We're talking about doctors, lawyers, right? Bankers, what have you, kings, princesses, queens, were forcibly removed and sold into what is called chattel slavery, aka the peculiar institution, BKA as we call it now, human trafficking. So if you study, which I had to do, you would realize that this was one of the most brutal places where slavery existed on the face of the earth maybe second to second to none, but probably trailing right behind them was, the United States, in terms of its mass size, right? And what you have to know is, which I learned, right, is that the island produced 2/3 of the world's sugar, as well as it was the leading provider of coffee during that time. Okay? So you see and understand the stakes, what's at stake and what's available. I'm telling you that story and had to provide that history because it serves as a backdrop as to how my life has been formulated since that period of time. Again, we're talking about the blueprint, part 1. And in my mind, I recognize that the world is only going to get better based upon where your mindset is. Okay? In other words, the foundation of life, your lifestyle, and how you want to live, how you want to think, what you look like, your physical body, your feelings. The foundation of all of that starts from your mind. Your mind. We've been doing a series, I've been doing a series called 100 Days of Real Motivation. And if you follow me, I guarantee that after these 100 days, in matter of fact, I don't think you have to wait. You're going to have to wait that long to start noticing a lot of changes in your life. All right? I'm going through changes myself. So I want to welcome you all to subscribe to my YouTube channel, right? And follow me because that's where all of this great stuff will come from. So the blueprint, problem 1, the mind is the foundation. The mind is a very powerful thing, right? The mind is the center or the engine that would lead you to success or failure, right? Okay? Greatness is a seed. Greatness is a seed. The mind is the earth or the ground. In order to plant seeds of greatness, you have to break up the fallow ground of your mind. Your mindset needs to be set in order for it to expand and grow, etc. So that you must then plow, dig deep, and plant for you to be able to grow and expand your consciousness, your perspective, your visions, your dreams, your plans, your lifestyle. Everything starts from your mindset. Your mindset creates your reality. Your visions, your dreams, your purpose. Like, why are you here? What is your purpose? What are you meant to do? So I have an idea, and I developed this concept. Well, probably it's not a development. It's just a realization, right? There's nothing new under the sun. That each one of us has programming, mental programming, that we only, right? Each individual has their own programming, where in which your programming is specific for a particular purpose, right? And we have yet to really comprehend the full scope of the mind and what the mind can do. But you have programming. That programming allows you to think and to dream, right? And to have these, visions, right? And for me, inside my mind, I couldn't find a place to rest until I had that library tatted on my chest. So in other words, I had to I sought knowledge, and I was thirsty and hungry, right? And I felt like, the school system, and we're talking about, I'm 15, 16, was not doing all that I needed it to do for me so that I could grow. So I sought out self-help. help. I've been doing this since I was 16. Put it this way, one of the things that I've always loved was music. And, I hate to say it, but yes, I was a rapper, right? Yes, I won a lot of talent shows. You may not believe it. I know a lot of people out there, they're still alive. So they can attest to this, right? Since junior high, I was involved in talent shows, winning talent shows, as a matter of fact. And then when I got to high school, I wanted to do the same. So one of the things that was lacking in high school, in fact, they banned rap from being a part of high school talent shows. Go figure, right? And see, these are the things that are happening that's causing my mind to feel constrained, right? See, a lot of parents and the system and the school system, right? I believe that a lot of kids, a lot of us were born geniuses, child prodigies. And I think the system and methods of education or miseducation creates us to be outside of the pocket, if you will, right? I think it disturbs our genius flow. It disturbs our ability to create and to be who we are, right? You're not going to call a turtle stupid because it doesn't have the view of a giraffe, right? Right? So it's I believe education should cater to individual. That's why homeschool, I think, is a good, really good option, right? All right. But back to this idea of the mind. I felt I was being robbed, right? Robbed of my culture, robbed of my history, robbed of experiencing life the way I wanted to experience life, right? I felt like, I wanted to be creative. And that wasn't an option, really. It wasn't really an option that was really available. So what did I do? Create for my own self. You start it off in your mind, and your mind is set on what it is that you want and how you want your world to be. And then you just do it, right? So at 16 years old, I used to see people performing, right, at the mall at 16 years old. I put on a suit. Yeah, 16. And grabbed my dad's briefcase. I didn't have much of anything in it. I probably may have put, a portfolio in there just to make it seem like I was doing something, right? I called the management at the mall, Cutler Ridge Mall, right? Which is now Southland or whatever you want to call it. And at 16, I explained to them, hey, I've seen performances being done here at the mall. I would like to have a performance. They're like, well, what kind of performance? I said, well, a group of kids and I formed this group called the Foundation. That's right. And the mall in Cutler Ridge is right across the street from the library. By that time, we had been practicing in the library because we were going to have a Black History show. They allowed us at South Dade Regional Library to actually, as part of their Black History Month activities, they allowed us to actually have a Black History show. I mean, this was incredible how we as kids produced and directed this whole thing. It started in our minds. The foundation is your mind. So as we created this group called the Foundation, we had rappers, we had singers, we had gospel music, we had R&B, we had spoken word, like literally. We had our own pianist, we had our choir director. I mean, it was really something incredible. Picture the Apollo meets America or Africa's Got Talent. The mind. The United Negro College Fund says the mind is a terrible thing to waste. I realized then that, I as a child understood a lot more than most adults would give me, right? Your kids, a lot of us need to stop goo-goo guying our kids, right? And really have some heart-to-heart conversations with them, right? You got to understand the same brain you have, these kids have. And the brain, because it's a muscle, is going to operate based upon how much exercise it gets. That's why you can have these kids, young kids, who, you know, are basically speaking, you know, 2, 3 to 4 different languages at an early age, right? Because they were exposed. When you're exposed to things at an early age, your brain becomes stronger. It expands your brain, right? And what expands the brain? Reading, travel, right? And being exposed to different cultures and different things. A made-up mind, right, is very significant to the way in which you think on a daily basis. The Bible says that, you know, with a made-up mind, you can do anything, basically. All of these preachers and teachers and life coaches and all of these coaches and motivational speakers, inspirational speakers, whatever you want to call it, they all draw their inspiration from biblical principles. The Bible says, and if you don't believe me, the Bible says, hey, you know, a double-minded man is unstable in all of his ways, right? If your mind is not made up, you're not going to be very good at creating something, right? You know, because you haven't made up your mind. That's all that means, right? But when we look at history, right, and we look at how the mind works and the effect that a made-up mind has on the world and its impact that it has on the world, what do I mean? Well, you know, back in 1780 something, there was a young man named Macandel, right? One of these Africans in Saint Dominique, who was one of the major people to spark the revolution. See, we have to go back and understand that in his mind, he realized that he no longer wanted to be regular. Okay? He no longer wanted to be enslaved, right? The old Negro spiritual says, you know, I'd rather be dead in my grave before I live my life as a slave, right? Jimmy Cliff came and I'd rather be dead in my grave before I live my life as a puppet or a slave. Listen, Macandel had a made-up mind. He woke up one day and said, nah, this ain't for me. This is not my cup of coffee or tea. I don't want this no more, right? Macandel had a made-up mind. We go back and even further, just a little further. Moses had a made-up mind. You know, he was that guy that, you know, he didn't want to be enslaved either. And actually, he was the next in line to be Pharaoh, but decided that his people who were being enslaved were more important than position. There's a lot of I'm unpacking here. So, you know, it's a buffet. Let's just say it's a buffet today. Blueprint 1, we're still honest, but I had to be a little bit more expansive today and just take my time. Moses said, nah, this ain't it. This is not gonna happen. And he saw a slave being beat down, and he decided to protect him, right? Self-defense, of another. That's a big legal technique word there, right? Self-defense of another, right? And he ended up killing this guy. He actually, you know, murdered him. birthed him, as some people might say. Let's fast forward a little further in history. Martin Luther King had a made-up mind. He said, you know what, listen, we ain't gonna have this no more. We're gonna have to find a way that we can coexist and make up in our minds that we're going to make this world a better place. He had a made up mind. Let's go back in history just a little bit. Some may call him the Messiah. Jesus had a made up mind, right? The question was asked because, what happens is there's these inhibitors towards your having a made up mind. Now, I'm going to tell you them real quick. The first inhibitor is self-perception. Self-perception. We become so inundated with what the world thinks of us or what people think of us. Self-perception. More importantly, right? Our self-perception, meaning what you think of yourself. Frankly, I don't care what people think of me, right? When I was a child, I thought like a child. Then when I became a man, I put away childish things. There's some people who are grown adults, and they still concerned about what people think about them, right? It's a sickness in your mind. Listen to me right now. You're programming for greatness. You're programmed to be poised, on your purpose on a daily basis. That is what you've been programmed to do, right? What happens in life is that we allow malware to invade our inner sanctum because we fail to have a firewall that would keep out the virus. And then the ransomware, the adware, the Trojan horses, the virus infects our child prodigy-like status. You understand what I'm saying to you right now? A lot of us need to, in our present state, reboot back to the foundation. I don't know if you're listening to me right now. We need to reboot back to the foundation. And get an antivirus software for our minds. We need a cleansing process to occur. This is the blueprint that I realized at 16. I realized that, man, I think I got like the Midas touch, because everything I touch turns to gold. By the way, let's get back to the Cutler Ridge Library. I met with the manager, and the manager says, well, that's a good idea. I said, hey, listen, seriously, here's our publication. We're in the Southdale Regional Library's publication. In 2 weeks, we're going to have the show. Rather we have that show, we'd like to have this show. You can come by to our practice. I said, don't worry, I believe you. But we're not going to be able to pay you. In my mind, I didn't understand the value that we were bringing to this mall. Because guess what? Our parents are going to be there. Business. Not only are our parents going to be there, people would love to see kids doing a show with that level of talent and ability. Look, I made sure that one thing, I said, hey, you know what? Okay, we don't really need any money. And we really, at that time, I didn't understand. I didn't know, okay, that we could have made a lot of moolah, right? A lot of money. The jewel of the thought of an idea that you create that then can make money. That's what I'm trying to tell you right now. I said, well, you know what? Listen, we don't necessarily, but one thing I've seen a lot of times that near the stage or the center of the mall, there's a piano store. And I want you to arrange with the piano store for us to be able to borrow their baby grand. You hear me? So I made sure that our musicians, had a baby grand, and that we had the mics and everything that we needed. The mind is a terrible thing to waste.